first of all, Catherine, just tell me your name and where you live and how you became, well, tell me first, just give us your name for the record.
All right, so Catherine Schiff, and I live south of Boston in Braintree, and then we also have a house in Chatham.
And you have been a fan or a student of Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis for a long time. Tell me how you came to be so fascinated with the First Lady.
Yeah, most of my life, honestly. I was about 8 years old and reading a book about First Ladies that must have gotten from the library. And again, I've always gravitated more towards history and literature than math and science, but was just reading about the First Ladies, and there was something about Jacqueline's story that just leapt out of the pages for me. And I can remember quite vividly, I wish I still had the book, but just what the illustrations were and just fascinated about her life. And I think especially, because it went into detail where she grew up, started in New York and in the Hamptons, but then eventually lived in Newport, which was quite close to Massachusetts, and I had been there before. And then also, Washington, D.C. outside at Marywood. And then to find out, again, in the course of this chapter about her, that she married John F. Kennedy and they lived in Hyannis, and I had been there too. So again, I don't know if it was that kind of sparked my imagination, but her love of animals, her love of France, all of those things just kind of added up. And so from 8 years old on, I was just hooked. So over the years have read just about everything that I could about her. Fortunately, again, living outside of Boston, very close to the Kennedy Library Museum there, so would often go in and go to different exhibits. And I remember watching on TV the groundbreaking ceremony, when she was there with Caroline and John. And again, now here in Hyannis, this amazing museum that has been built to be able to come and see these exhibits, especially where so much of, their lives, especially the Kennedys before Jacqueline became part of the family, but just, being part of Hyannis and the community and Cape Cod and having that, very strong bond over the years, I think has been really special.
So we know a lot of people are attracted to the museum because they happen across it, but there are other people that make a pilgrimage to come see. I think you probably fall in the category of, you would probably make a pilgrimage to come see some of these exhibits and to just appreciate more of the First Lady's history about here. So how many years have you been, since you were 8 years old, have you just been reading more about her and going to places that were related to the first family, or how's that been woven through your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, making visits both to the museum in Boston and here in Hyannis, having been to Hammersmith Farm many times, having gone to Georgetown to see where they lived there when they were a newly married couple, obviously having been to the White House many times, obviously not in the past couple of years with what has transpired, but, and again, seeing, especially fascinated with the White House piece of it because she was so instrumental in the restoration of the White House. That was such a big project that she did, and considering she had such a love of history and culture and an appreciation of historic homes throughout the world, that she wanted to make the White House, which is the People's House, reflect that. And again, presidents before the Kennedy administration had not really had that sense of history and time and place. So she really made it her big part of her job when she was at the White House for those years, and won an Emmy for that. She did a tour of the White House once it was completed. But again, just to restore it to its historic, spectacular place that it is.
Yeah, that's amazing. So in terms of the First Lady and after her First Lady career, what is one of your most, what did she do or say or write that you found most impactful? Is there one or two things that just kind of stand out? The White House you mentioned, the renovation and restoration, and actually redecoration, reimagination of the White House was amazing. But was there something else that really stands out for you?
Absolutely, because again, the White House was those 1,000 magical days, but then so much of her life came after the White House. And again, I think people have to remember she was a young, widow in her 30s with two very young children that, again, one of my favorite quotes that she ever said was, if you don't get, raising your children right, or if you bungle raising your children, nothing else that you do will really matter. She really took being a mother and her enjoyment of motherhood very seriously and protective of her children. And again, they grew up to be just amazing, outstanding, successful people in their own right, which I think is so important. And then again, in her 70s, when not in her 70s, in the 70s, when she was again still a young woman, I mean, in her, I think probably late 40s, right at that point, started a career as an editor and incredibly successful, because again, her entire life, she was such a voracious reader and just had such an appreciation of literature. She spent her junior year abroad at the Sorbonne. She won a writing prize, Vogue magazine, the Prix de Paris, where she could have gone to France and worked as an editor for a year. So her love of reading, her love of literature, again, I think it was the perfect career for her to go back to, if you will. And she published or helped publish several important books. But again, it's that love of reading. And I was always struck when she passed away and John came out in front of, her home and had to announce her passing to the press. And he said she was surrounded by the people and the books that she loved. So again, I love that she had just, that sense. And so many pictures, and I think there are some downstairs, of she's reading a book on a plane, or again, they had a lot of campaign stops, along the way where she would just take some time to read.
So we do have this amazing photographic exhibit on loan from the museum, and we want to go downstairs and just have you walk me through and share your thoughts or help me understand what might have been happening at that point in time when this picture of amazing photography was being captured for history, because we want people to make sure they come and see it, and it's going to get shipped back into the vault in December, so we only have a few more months left. So how about ready to go downstairs and kind of walk through and see?
Do you know the story of how they met Jacques Lowe? Do you know that story?
I think I do, but why don't you tell me?
Because I think that's really interesting. So I'll just really briefly, but he was a freelance photographer. It was about 1956, 57, 28 years old, and working for a bunch of different magazine publications, whoever would call him. And he got an assignment to go cover Bobby Kennedy, who at that point was becoming quite a sensation in Washington on his own, being part of I think it was an anti-racketeering committee. So Jacques was given this assignment and he went and photographed Bobby, went great. Then was called like the day after to go back for a different magazine to photograph Bobby, and Bobby knew someone was coming, but was shocked when Jacques Lowe walked through the door again. And then it happened again the subsequent day, so 3 times in a row. So Bobby said, he must be somebody, and invited him to dinner at their home in DC, and struck up a friendship with he and Ethel, which then he kept getting photographic assignments, but the friendship continued to the point where he was invited to their home in McLean, Virginia, and then also here to Hyannisport. And when he got up here, again, all of the Kennedy kids were there, and they had friends and cousins over, and animals and games, and it was just, again, as you can imagine, quite a vibrant atmosphere. So he just took, as he would always was just take pictures. So as a thank you, to capture the last 12 months that they had been together, he sent Bobby and Ethel a set of 130 prints. Bobby immediately called him, loved him, and he said, I need another set. And Jacques Lowe was like, why? These are a lot of pictures, Bobby. What do you need another set for? And he said, it's my father's birthday and I would like to give it to him as a gift. So Jacques Lowe printed them off, packaged them up, and sent them to Bobby. And, a couple weeks went by, and then the phone rang at midnight for Jacques Lowe, and he picked up the phone. It was Ambassador Kennedy saying, Thank you so much. It is my birthday. I just got the most amazing gift I've ever gotten and the most beautiful pictures of my family. And I would like you to come and meet my other son. And he didn't know which other son until he got there and met Jack and Jacqueline, and the rest is history. So I just love that story because, again, it's just fates coming together to, and again, when we go downstairs and see some of these photographs, and just to show that the friendship that struck up, some of these pictures are just so natural, in terms of they're not posed, it's their real life. And I think, especially for Jackie in future years, she became very protective, but it just kind of shows you before the presidency, just how this kind of evolved and how things progressed. So.
People have called the photography very intimate.
Yeah.
And I understand that Jacques Lowe had unprecedented access to the family, and that the ambassador had actually hired him to do during the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the successful campaign, then the first year when they were in the White House. Is that?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because again, these photographs were so beautiful, and they were so, and again, you think about they were all relatively the same age, and it was a very exciting time. And, you look now, with Pete Souza and what he did during the Obama administration, again, that kind of access behind the scenes, but it had never been done before Jacques Lowe did it with the Kennedys. So again, I think just the power of photography and showing people what, because a lot of times you just see the posed photographs or the working, and to see a family, especially a very young family, in the White House, I think was just so magical for a lot of people. And it's just amazing that he was able to capture all of that.
That's great. Well said.